The new moon in Sagittarius will regenerate our relationship with fire. There is a fire of the hearth at the center of our home that we gather around, that we gather our community around. There is that inner hearth of fire within, that fiery forge at the center of our being that is the source of our creativity and our inspiration. And of course, there is the fiery sun at the center of our solar system, the source of our light, the source of that eternal creation. Every morning when the sun cracks the darkness at the dawn of the new day, the fire of Sagittarius stokes movement and kindles inspiration. It's the fiery home of Jupiter, the star of Zeus. It's the fiery triplicity of the sun. It's a place of claiming inspired authority and leadership. Sagittarius ignites our capacity to lift the spirits of those around us in the darkest hour when everything counts. Fire is the element that rises to the celestial summit and rises quickly to the greatest heights. Fire is the element of divine inspiration and spirit. The enthusiasm of Sagittarius in particular is like no other. Sagittarius can walk into the room and light it up, can break up tension with laughter, can break through stagnation with greater movement. There's a lot of talk in astrology about how we are in an era of air because of the Jupiter and Saturn conjunctions only occurring in air signs now. But the element of fire will be incredibly important in the years ahead, and especially at this transition from 2024 into 2025. And the element of fire is at the center of the symbolic importance of this new moon in Sagittarius. Not only is the moon being reanimated by the sun in the fiery sign of Sagittarius, but Mercury is retrograde in Sagittarius and applying toward a conjunction with the sun. When Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius applies towards a conjunction with the sun, Mercury is going through a process of death and rebirth and shepherding us through our own inner process of purification, renewal, regeneration, and reanimation. This is always a fiery experience, but that fire is accentuated by it taking place in the fiery sign of Sagittarius. And this also means our own relationship with fire is going through a process of death, rebirth, and reanimation. At the time of the Sagittarius new moon, Mercury is in a psychopomp role of moving backwards towards a conjunction with the sun. And so this conjunction with the sun will take place a few days after the lunation on December 5th. Most dramatically, this conjunction and rebirth of Mercury with the sun will be taking place at the same time Mars is stationing retrograde in the fiery sign of Leo. Mars will station retrograde in Leo the next day on December 6th, less than a week from the new moon in Sagittarius. And so this means that the intensification of Mars stationing and volatilizing the element of fire in the sign of Leo is another hugely important theme and influence going on with this Sagittarius new moon. This means that our relationship with Leo will be intensifying in a site of great change that will continue to unfold from now all the way through next April because of the long series of oppositions that Mars retrograde in Leo will form with Pluto in Aquarius. And then after Mars eventually stations direct, Mars will come back to form another opposition with Pluto while being in the fiery sign of Leo next April. Of course, Leo is the fiery home of the sun, and so has even greater symbolic connection with kings, leaders, and authorities. And so, with Mars volatilizing this sign, we can expect great changes, great power dynamics to erupt and bring all types of greater conflict and change occurring in world events during this next period of time. But this also means that in our personal lives, we can also experience breakthrough changes. And it will be more important than ever to be connecting with this source of inner fire and creativity and passion and authority and leadership that you have within you so that you can fully participate in the great change that is going to be coming in this next year. And so there's a lot of focus on disruption, volatility, purification, regeneration, and change in the fire signs of Sagittarius and Leo at this new moon. The other fire sign of Aries, though, has also been going through great processes of change. There has been the transit of Chiron, but most importantly, in the past couple of years, there have been very intense solar eclipses occurring in Aries. One thing we know about the astrology of 2025 is that the change that has already been happening with Aries with these powerful solar eclipses the past couple of years is only at the beginning of a much larger process of change to come. And that is because there will be another solar eclipse in Aries in 2025 at the same time that Neptune will be leaving Pisces to enter Aries, and Saturn will also leave Pisces to enter Aries. And when that solar eclipse happens in Aries in 2025, Venus and Mercury will both be retrograde in Aries. And so while this greater change with Aries is coming later in 2025, several months from now, the change underway with the fire signs at this new moon in Sagittarius will also be impacting the Aries part of your life as well. And so, whatever's going on now with those changes, we also want to think about how it's impacting your relationship and placements that you have in Aries. So, all together, we have this great, flowing, volatile field of change erupting around us with the fire element. And that's why it'll be very important to get into deeper relationship with fire and your inner source of fire. It will be of vital importance to tend your inner fire of creativity, inspiration, and passion. With Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius going through a process of rebirth in the week following the new moon, and Mars stationing retrograde in Leo at the same time, we need to pay attention to how we tend that inner fire and keeping in mind that fire, of course, always needs something to consume. So, this can mean your bodily health and your bodily diet and what you're consuming and how that relates to your energy levels and so forth. But with Pluto in Aquarius, with Jupiter in Gemini opposing the new moon and opposing Mercury in Sagittarius, we also need to keep in mind our mental consumption. What books are we reading? What media are we consuming? What are we looking at and consuming on social media or the internet? And how is this inspiring us and placing us into deeper contact with our inner fire and creativity? Or how is this distracting us or depressing us or leading us into greater despair or hopelessness? This is all going to be really important to keep in mind. And Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius right now can be incredibly helpful for putting you into deeper touch with these issues and helping you let go of whatever has been getting in the way of being in deeper touch with your inner creativity and your inner fire and your inner passion and determination. This is a perfect time within the Mercury retrograde process to be purging and letting go and changing the patterns that have been operating in your life. And so that is one of the most powerful aspects of this new moon in Sagittarius. Now, what's also fascinating is that the new moon in Sagittarius is close to the degree of the royal star Antares, the heart of the scorpion. Antares is a royal star of great eminence. And so we again will probably be seeing big issues and conflicts unfolding around the world with leaders and so forth. We can see that all clearly happening. Antares is a star that kindles courage and determination, that courageous resiliency that is needed to undergo processes of death and rebirth and purification. It's a star that can bring us down through processes of regeneration, through an underworld journey like we will be experiencing with Mercury retrograde and Mars retrograde in these fiery signs. The new moon in Sagittarius conjoining Antares is a beautiful symbol of the courageous resiliency being available to face our fears and deepen into whatever processes of interchange are necessary right now, to let go of what we need to let go of and focus and fixate on our priorities and the work that truly matters to us. However, there is also a warning with Antares around obsession. We will need to find a healthy balance between fixating on our work and priorities versus going to extremes that can lead to burnout. So, again, this is a very key issue to keep in mind with how do you tend that inner fire and tend your passions so you can keep yourself in a good place of energy. And this will include at times needing to take a rest, take a break. The other warning with Antares and obsession with Mars stationing retrograde, opposing Pluto at the same time, is that we also will need to bring awareness to potential conflicts and arguments and strife and that sort of thing going on around you. This is not the time to engage in arguments and fights that will just drag you down and dissipate your energy and waste your time. Unless something is going on that really needs your defense and protection, you'll really need to bring awareness to what kind of conflict or provoking could be going on around you that could potentially make you react and then provoke a really needless conflict. So that is definitely a big thing to also keep in mind with the Antares contact and Mars stationing retrograde at the same time. The other major aspect of the Sagittarius new moon is the flowing trine between Venus and Capricorn and Uranus and Taurus. This is a very powerful trine because Uranus is in the home of Venus. So this is occurring in Earth sign. So this could be something much more pragmatic and practical and problem solving, something that really can give you a really tangible breakthrough solution. But of course, Uranus does have connection with the archetypal figure of Prometheus, who stole the fire of the gods and gave it to humanity. And so, in the way that Uranus always has this fiery, inspirational force involved in it, it's another symbol of our relationship with fire being very important at this new moon. Now, the other thing that was happening, besides what I've already mentioned, is the fact that the combination of the Sagittarius new moon forming a opposition with Jupiter retrograde in Gemini, as well as a square aspect with Saturn in Pisces, places this new moon right into the waxing square aspect being formed by Jupiter and Saturn. This is a much larger cycle of change. I recently did another video here on my channel about Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius that went into this a great deal. But this is another reason why this new moon in Sagittarius is so important. It's because it is connecting us into the Jupiter and Saturn cycle, which is part of much larger societal change. And it's also connecting us to the Saturn and Neptune cycle that is coming to an end, and also part of much greater change that will be coming. So we can get a lot of information for how our own processes of interchange are connecting with the much larger waves of societal change happening around us. And because the new moon is forming this square with Saturn, that is bringing up a lot of the symbolism of what's in our way. What kind of blocks might we be facing? This is not the kind of leaping Sagittarius new moon that is just unrestrained and untethered. It is locking into that weight and gravity of Saturn. So we will become aware of our limitations. We will become aware of what might be leading to stagnation and depression and that sort of thing. So whatever tension is coming up for you with this new moon and whatever Saturn issues you have been you've been dealing with and you've been working with. It's a long process with Saturn, right? So this is going to give us a lot of information about that. But again, keep in mind the importance of this fire element and use that information to help you connect deeper with that inner source of creative inner fire. So right after this new moon, we immediately get Mercury coming into an opposition with Jupiter. This is a mutual reception opposition. They're each in each other's signs. It's a very complicated aspect. I also went into this a great deal in my video on Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius. But when we're talking about this inner connection with fire, the positive side of this opposition is the possibility of inner visioning. And that inner visioning can open us up to larger dreams. So this is a great Sagittarius new moon to get a bigger sense of inner visioning, enlarge the scope of your dreams, enlarge the scope of your hopes and what you really want to bring into your life. But this is more in again the way of inner visioning, because there's also the constraints of Saturn that we are dealing with at the same time. And so it's more a time to get, again, this sense of this bigger dream and this bigger purpose. And then using that tension with Saturn that's coming in to get really serious about how can we make this more realistic in the short term? What can we work on right now that can help us lead to this greater, bigger dream that we have for the future? That's going to be really the way to work with this. And so we end up having a really amazing sequence of events following the Sagittarius new moon. We have the new moon on December 1st. We then have Mercury opposing Jupiter on December 4th. We have Mercury going through its reanimation and its rebirth on December 5th. A really important day, right, to pay attention to your own inner processes as well as new ideas that might be seeded that you're going to be working on for months going forward. And that's all happening at the same time that Mars is stationing retrograde the next day, and Mercury then moves into the square aspect with Saturn. So this is a week of fast moving events and change and transition. My books for December are open if you'd like to schedule a consultation with me and talk about all this immense change coming with the astrology and how that relates to your own life and whatever kind of dreams and goals you have for the year ahead. This is a perfect time to schedule a consult to talk about what's going on with you and how that relates to the year ahead. You can find out more information and book a consultation with me on my website, graycrawford.net. And if you'd like to join my Patreon community or find out more information on my Patreon, you can also get information about it on my website. For those of you that are already part of my Patreon, I'd like to thank you for your continued support. It's been what's made all of this work I've been doing possible, including getting more videos going, which I'm just at the start of doing. So if you are not part of my Patreon community, though, and you'd like to find out more about it, we have different tiers there that's possible to join, two of which involve meetings that happen each month and a whole learning community that goes on there. Most recently, on the highest tier, we've been having monthly classes about the meaning of different fixed stars, which has been very exciting, and I've learned a lot myself in the process. So please check that out on my website, graycrawford.net. And otherwise, I hope to see you soon for a consultation. And thank you for listening and supporting my work here.